Due to the graphic nature of the crimes discussed during this podcast, listener discretion is advised.
Girl, we have had, okay, so guys, we have had some technical difficulties. So that's why we're getting this episode out a little late, but I'm telling the story. I actually had a crazy week. So I had somebody came up on my deck yesterday. No, excuse me, the day before yesterday. Yes.
Weren't we just talking
and
about that though? Me and you?
What?
Somebody coming up on your deck. We talked about that like last week.
What? No way.
Because remember you said to me you want to maybe take a nap on your deck. And I said I couldn't do that
you thought
because somebody would walk up on the deck.
You sure did say this. Well, this happened at night. This happened at like 11 o'clock at night. And I'm not cutting this out of the podcast. So, because the plot thickens. So somebody came up on the deck. Yes, I got it on camera. And it was really crazy. I actually found out who the person was. They are associated with one of my neighbors.
Shut up.
I will end it there because I don't want to say the rest about it on this podcast.
Oh my God.
But that's all that happened with me so far. What's going on with you? How's everybody doing?
Oh, everybody's doing good. I mean, because we stay in the house over here, but LA is a hot mess.
Me too.
LA is a hot mess. Too many people out. Nobody has masks on. Nobody has gloves on. It's like Corona never happened out here.
No, I will say I'm not good with the glove. Like I never got re-upped on the gloves, but I do wash my hands and I do wear the hand sanitizer. But I don't leave the house out. I don't leave the house without a mask. And even like today, my mom dropped some stuff off for me. She had went to Costco, dropped some stuff off with me. Even if I'm around them and we're outside, I still wear a mask. They wear a mask. Like we're really
yeah.
This is a long one, guys. And as you probably heard already, I did air the disclaimer because this is going to be a rough case. So on December 1st, 2002, 42-year-old Ronald Dominique from Thibodaux, Louisiana, was charged with the murder of two men in Jefferson Parish. Thibodaux, Louisiana is about 90 minutes southwest of New Orleans, just to give you a reference point. During the police interrogation, he confessed to those murders along with 21 others. So that's a lot. Not only did Dominique murder these men, but he also raped them, every single one of them. Now, and the ages of these men range from 16 to 40. How does a middle-aged, short, fat man who also has health issues, he had a heart condition, how does he strangle and rape 21 men and two teenage boys, you might ask? Well, it was not by strength. It was pretty much his MO or methodology was pretty much the same as John Wayne Gacy. He used restraints and he pretty much just asked the men to restrain them. Ronald Joseph Dominique was also known as the Bayou Strangler. He was born January 9th, 1964, also, and again in Thibodaux, Louisiana. Ronald was shy. He was short, kept to himself, did not do particularly well in school, did not have many friends, mainly spent time with his nearby extended family. He was close with his sister and his aunts. He was often teased by his male cousins. He was bullied regularly during school, and he was in the Glee Club in high school, and also was teased for that. And of course, and again, they called him short, fat, gay. At the time, he had not yet come out. He worked after high school. He worked odd jobs. And like I stated earlier, he developed a heart condition in his late 20s. He came out as gay in his mid 20s, and he was a regular of the gay nightlife scene in Houma, Louisiana, which is a neighboring city or slash town of Thibodaux, Louisiana. So this is the same area. He often performed in drag at the local gay clubs. He was not particularly good, but he did enjoy the stage. It reminded him of his Glee Club days when he was in high school. And oddly enough, he was teased in the gay community. He was not particularly well liked. I mean, his neighbors, they said that he was okay, but he was, it was known to, he seemed a bit off to his neighbors and people that he encountered with. Now, in 1993, at the age of 29, he worked as a truck driver. He was a truck driver for a vending company. On one of his rides, he saw a young man walking, asked him if he needed a ride. The young man accepted. During this ride, the young man spoke of his drug addiction and his homelessness. So this guy was on hard times. Dominique preyed on this, and he was attracted to the man, but he knew the man was not attracted to him. So he came up with a plan to meet up with the man in a few days, offering to sell him weed. So in a few days, they met up at the same place where they initially had met, and Dominique asked the man if he would go to his trailer, go back to his trailer where he lived to buy the weed, and he obliged. Why he didn't have the weed on him when they met up, if I was the guy, I would have questioned that, but obviously that's why he didn't.
That's the first red flag.
Right. But clearly he had a motive behind it. And the guy, who knows, I guess might not have dawned on him. So not on the man, and told the man to handcuff himself to the bed, and he raped him, because that's the only way he would be able to rape him. He could not physically overpower him. So he raped him, let him go. 3 years later, at the age of 32, Ronald Dominique found his second victim. Now, we're going to say this was his second victim because this is the second victim that we know of. I personally think he probably had victims in between then that just didn't come forward. Or maybe because we're going to come across, when we go through these cases, a lot of these guys, unfortunately, were drifters. Some were on drugs. So they're kind of on the fringes of society. So those people probably are not going to come forward and say that they were raped by a man, and they're men themselves.
Well, so but anyway. Also, though, I mean, if you're going to be a serial killer or a serial rapist, I mean, aren't those the kind of people that you want to commit crimes on? Because like you said, they're not going to come forward, but if they go missing, who's going to know? You know what I mean? Nobody's going to report them missing, and you get away with all this stuff.
Exactly. And he actually said that. He said he would target people that he did not think people would miss. He targeted homeless guys. He targeted people that were on drugs. He targeted, some of his victims were in the gay community. Back in the day, they used to refer to them as hustlers. I'm not going to refer to them as that. I'm going to say male prostitutes. I think that's just a little bit more politically correct. But back, if you're doing research, it's going to say this guy was a hustler. But they were male prostitutes because they were on drugs. And so they resulted to sex work. So you're absolutely right. He knew that. So anyway, the second, 3 years later, the second victim had the same exact pattern. Just like the first victim, he picked up the man, offering him a ride. The man agreed, offered to sell him drugs, went back to the trailer. He assaulted him. He assaulted him he sexually assaulted him, and he left. The second victim actually this time was believed unlike the first victim. And the second victim gave his report to the same officer that took the first report down. So after that, and he was able to ID Ronald Dominique. So he knew where the trailer was, and he knew, he knew who it was that assaulted him. They came forward.
He didn't remember the address, but he physically went with the cop. I think they did a drive-by, and he's like, "Oh, that's it. That's where it was."
So he, they picked him up. They had an interrogation. He was a terrible liar, and he was arrested on assault charges and was in jail. During the 3 months he was in jail, he was raped, which that's karma. But
beautiful karma.
Yeah. It was. Unfortunately, he was not tried or convicted because the second victim was not able to be located. So Ronald Dominique did not face prison time for that crime. But during that jail period, because he was raped, he pretty much blamed the victim for his being in jail. He said he would never, he thought to himself, I'm never going to leave any living witnesses, because he knew he was going to do this again. But he knew, okay, I can't leave any witnesses because I don't want to go back to jail.
Want to get caught, so instead of not doing it, I'll just kill them. Like, it's so much easier to just kill them.
Exactly. In July of 1997, Ronald Dominique did the same thing like he did with his other previous victims that he had raped but didn't murder. Dominique's first murder victim was David Mitchell. David Mitchell was 19 years old, and just like his previous victims, he talked him into coming home with him, tied him up, raped him, and murdered him. This was the first murders, like I said, and he dragged his body out to a sugarcane field and left him there. With the rape and murder of David Mitchell, he just continued to do this for the next 9 years. And during this time, when all of these men were being murdered and raped, he never once was a suspect, which to me is kind of crazy. Yeah.
But I think this was also before the time of, let's say, surveillance cameras, and, obviously like cell phone tracking and DNA, you know what I mean? Like way before all of this. So we have to look at it with a more accurate eye of the limitations that they really had back then.
Right. This is Louisiana in the early 90s, and most of these victims were of color, and don't nobody care about gay black men in the 90s in Louisiana. Let's just keep it 100. I mean, it's unfortunate, but if this was, 2020 in Washington, D.C. or in L.A., it would be different, and I like to think in 2020 in Louisiana, but I don't, like Jeffrey Dahmer had numerous victims, and it was just like, oh, this is some gay sex stuff that was going on. Which
important to note, though, that not all of Dominique's victims were gay.
Exactly.
And I know that they weren't. Because when I have talked to my best friend, a black male, about this story, he was like, well, can no guy get me to go home with him to kill me? And I was like, no, you have to understand, what Dominique did was actually pretty smart, considering I think he was a stupid person.
I think he was too.
Dominique carried a picture of a good-looking woman in his wallet. And if he saw the guy who he thought or could tell was gay, he would say, do you want to come home with me to have sex? Mm-hmm. It's easier for a guy to pick up a guy that way.
And he offered them money. These were also, men that particularly engaged in sex work. The gay
right,
ones.
whether they were direct sex workers, or they just were like, yo, I could use a couple bucks right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but for the heterosexual males, what Dominique did was he would flash the picture of this woman and say, this is my wife, and I'm looking for somebody to come home with me and have sex with her. So he lured the men in that way because they thought, oh, okay, this is weird, but I'll go home with this guy. He wants me to have sex with his wife.
And these guys were still down on their luck. They were down on their luck. They were often drifters. A lot of them, you know, and I'm not trying to speak negatively about these victims, but they were drug users, you know, so these weren't, you know, they were on the fringes of society already. And he knew that. That's why he picked them, which is still disgusting. Yeah. And it's sad that, you know, you're going after these people that are already in a bad situation. But it was exactly like you said, he was, and how he got them into the restraints is he would ask them, could you please restrain yourself so she feels more comfortable? And they would oblige. And once they were in those handcuffs and they were in those restraints, they were done. And one victim actually did get away. One victim said, he's like, I don't care. You can have all the money in the world. I'm not handcuffing myself. And he was.
Research indicates that he basically, once he got them home, he would say, can I handcuff you? And if they said yes, he would handcuff them and then kill them. If they said no, he would just let them go.
Yep.
So that's crazy to me. Is like, if I'm a random person walking into a stranger's house who I don't know, and the first thing they say is, can I handcuff you? The answer is going to be no every time. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's what that one guy said. He says, you could talk a hole in your head. You're not getting me in those handcuffs. And he was able to live and tell the tale. But again, it's like, if you're on those drugs, you'll do things that you would have thought you would do, you know? So to the regular person, it's like, yo, that's crazy. But it's really not crazy. People that are on drugs, they will do anything to get that drug. And I get it. And it's sad. It's really sad.
Question that I have, just while we have a snapshot of this case.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think, because prior to you, when you sent me the Amazon documentary on this, the Amazon Prime doc, I had literally never heard of this guy. And I have been into murder as long as I can remember, like dating back to when I was like a young teenager. Love the ID channel, love murders, love murder mysteries. I have never heard of this man. Why do you think that is?
Me either. So it's funny you said that. Same with me. I've always watched Dateline. I've always watched ID channel, and I had never heard of this case either. And the only reason I've heard of this case is because I am in another Facebook group, another podcast Facebook group, and I was talking with one of the members, and she said to me, she was like, oh, do you like lesser known cases? And I was like, yeah, sure. So she was like, okay, well, I can send you some recommendations. And she sent me that documentary, Blue Bayou. And I was like, what? WTF? I had never heard of it. So to answer your question, I'm going to tell you why I think I never heard of it. I think we never heard of this because this was a gay serial killer killing pretty much to what society would deem as derelicts. There was people, there wasn't, they figured people would not care. And again, for 23 victims, because we're talking, that's like Jeffrey Dahmer numbers.
Right.
You know, and Jeffrey Dahmer was a serial, and we know Jeffrey Dahmer, no, he didn't eat these people, but you don't hear for us both to have not heard about a gay serial killer that raped and murdered 23 men, I still think is crazy. But to answer your question, I think who the victims were, the time frame, and I just think it was who the victims were and the time frame is why we haven't heard about it. Because again, 23 is like, if you look him up, folks, you're gonna see prolific serial killer. It's gonna come up. It says prolific, so like that means this guy had a lot of kills. And again,
that's crazy to me.
That's what's crazy. What's crazy to me is a man that's able to murder and rape 20. Like, it's hard to rape a man. Let's just keep it 100. It's hard to rape a man. The only way I ain't gonna say the only way. It's like how John Wayne Casey, I think he was like, had killed 30 victims or something. And his victims were not grown men. They were mainly teenage boys, young men. These guys, 16 to age 49. So these are not all. Now, they were typically slim build, but nevertheless, these were still grown men. And mind you, Ronald Dominique, again, is a short, fat guy, not in good shape, heart condition.
Gross. Yeah.
Gross. Like, even a heart condition. So, but like I said, the way he was able to do this is by restraints, which was the same way how John Wayne Gacy was able to have rape and murder so many of his victims. They were restrained. And with Jeffrey Dahmer, those guys were drugged. And Jeffrey Dahmer was no small guy. Like he was about 6'4". He was a good solid size guy. So
I just think it's crazy because his motive was obviously sexual.
Sex.
Right.
It was that's that. His motive was sex. It was not a murder. It was his motive was not murdery.
Right. Murder, I think murder was just a means to keep himself from getting caught. I don't think he wanted to just go out and kill people. But I'm like, damn, you mean to tell me you couldn't find anybody to have sex with you? This is how you had to get your sex? It's crazy to me.
I think the reason why he felt the need to rape instead of just paying, because you can easily just pay somebody for sex and like, because they were, sex workers, and we could just pay them to have sex, move on with your life. I think he felt, and I'm not 100%, I think he felt like some shame with being gay because of the teasing. But then at the same time, I don't know, because you still were a regular in the gay scene. You dressed in drag, you dressed up like Patti LaBelle, so you clearly was cool with, to me, with being gay, because you're a part of the gay scene. But then again, maybe there's some hatred towards the gay community because he was not popular in the gay community. He wasn't very well liked in the community.
Yeah, and to me, that's a red flag warning sign, because I have my cousin is gay. I have gay people who I'm friends with who are in my family. They are accepting of everybody. So to be like ostracized by the gay community, like they had to tell you were scum of the earth before you even really revealed yourself. Like you had to be given off terrible vibes as a human being for the gay community to reject you.
They said that they could tell he was a little off. That's what in some of the research that I did, they just said they could tell he was off, and clearly they were right. If he would talk to his victims. If he got a sense that they were straight, he would offer them money, show them a picture of this woman, said that this woman was his wife. He couldn't please his wife. Could they have sex with the wife? And he would pay them for money. They would go back to the trailer. He would ask them, could they restrain themselves so she could feel more comfortable? They would agree. He would then rape them, murder them, and he dumped their bodies in two places. One of them, I believe, was the sugarcane field or like the side of the road. And the other place was, from my research, was not disclosed. I don't know why the police didn't, but it was not disclosed. The second way he would get his victims, he would, again, if you were gay, then he would just offer money, and they're thinking they're just going to have a regular encounter client. He would say he wasn't comfortable. Would they mind restraining themselves? They would agree, and then he would rape them, and then he would murder them and dump their bodies the same way. I'm looking at the pictures of the victims, and I said earlier. I said there were about 3 white victims. I see 4. So of the 23 men, it looks like 4 of them were Caucasian.
You know what that sounds like to me, though? Again, like you said, serial killers don't typically cross color lines. I feel like this man had anger because he liked black men. Like maybe for him down south, way back when, that was wrong. But
see,
it's
I don't think so. I actually don't. I don't agree. I think other thing. Because this area is such a small area, he knows, how do I put it? This is a small town. So for him to not get caught, because he still was hunting in his area, it's not going to be in his best interest to target someone that he knows and that's in his community, meaning lives, in his area, because he's going to get fingered. He's not going to get away with it. So in order for me to hunt in my area, it's best for me to prey on these drifters or these people that are on drugs, or these people that are already sex workers, because nobody's going to care and really look into it.
Well, I mean,
and he's right, because this guy wasn't the smartest guy. This guy clearly wasn't so freaking smart, and he did this crap for 10 years and had 23 victims. Right. So clearly there's some truth to that.
I think also police, when there's murder investigations, they always start with the person's inner circle, because 75% of the time it's somebody that the victim knows or is related to. Right. You know what I mean? So they exhaust all their resources doing stuff like that. And it's a totally random case. And those are the hardest to solve. Absolutely. And I noticed too, from watching the Amazon Prime doc that you sent me, is everybody who they interviewed when they were talking to all the victims' family members, it was such a poor, rundown town that they were in.
Yes.
That it's like, I mean, everybody was probably poor. The police department was probably poor. Like, nobody's going to have money to conduct, a thorough investigation or hire private investigators or anything like that. Everybody was poor.
Yeah. He was charged with multiple cases of rape and first-degree murder, because this was premeditated. And on September 23rd, 2008, Ronald Dominique was sentenced to 8 life sentences after confessing to killing and raping his male victims over a 10-year span. He pled out primarily to avoid the death penalty, and he is currently incarcerated in Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola, which is one of the worst prisons to be a prisoner in. I've seen documentaries on Angola. It looks like a slave plantation.
It literally looks like it looks like another country. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and it's huge, and they have them out working these fields. It's pretty freaking crazy. So good.
Yeah, good. He deserves it. But isn't it always ironic when serial killers plead to avoid the death penalty? I'm like, oh, that would suck, wouldn't it? That's what you did to everybody else.
And I don't know. I think I'd rather have the death penalty than friggin' have to be. I mean, I don't know. I would rather take the death penalty, but who knows? I'm not a piece of shit murderer.
There you go.
Raper either.
There you go. Plus, he gets all the free sex he wants in jail. You know what I mean? Like,
that's true. You're crazy.
Oh
girl.
My God.
All right. Well, that's all I have, folks, for you this week. We will be back next week with another murder, and we did a couple gay murders back to back, so let's switch it up. I don't want people thinking that we're targeting the gay community, because I'm definitely not doing that. I am definitely an ally.
Right.
That's just how it played out so far. But yeah, so that's it. I don't have any announcements. Do you have any announcements?
No. Stay safe, everybody. That's all I got to say. Stay safe.
Yes, please stay safe, and please wear your mask, people. Do not forget your mask. In fact, keep some in the car. That way you always have them. That's what I do. We have for this week, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate it. See you guys next week.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.